Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. That was a wonderful talk. If any of you were there with Dr. Joni, I'm really happy to come after her for my session here. I'm speaking from Oregon in the United States. Macrobiotics is very dear to my heart. It's very close to me. I've been around it for a very long time. In fact, when I was very young, I started in my household. My parents had some really old publications of Georgia Sawa, and I would read about the brown rice diet and the unifying principle and such. And I was brought up on health foods, actually, on not necessarily macrobiotics, but I was brought up on health foods for a very long time, where we made our own whole wheat bread and we made our own granola and fermented foods and such. I've been around whole foods for a very long time. After as I grew, I would see. I never saw a medical doctor growing up. It was more chiropractors and naturopaths, and I got tired of the amount of natural supplements that were suggested, especially to my parents. And so when I got older, I contacted the Cushy Institute, and I went through all the levels. And it was really, I went through all the levels, and then I became a head cook, and I taught, I cooked in the summer conference, and I cooked for Michio Kushi, and it was really, I considered it my golden years. And back then I was at the Beckett Institute in Massachusetts. It was really a wonderful place. It was in the 90s when I was there. And after the Cushy Institute, then I became a private cook macrobiotically, and I went back west, and I started a company, organic catering and whole food cooking classes, and went through all of that. And I have really been around natural healing for decades, and since my childhood, actually. When I moved to the Rogue Valley into Oregon about 11, 12 years ago, I was the nutritionist in a medical clinic. And I wrote a book called For the Love of Eating, specifically for my clients, to teach them how to properly prepare whole grains and greens and such. And then about 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. This was quite a shock, as you can imagine. I have been around whole foods my whole life. I've been eating clean my whole life. And the shock of a chronic disease is astounding, at least for me, for everyone. And so it couldn't happen to me. I was blindsided. But once I got over the shock, and I contacted macrobiotic counselors throughout the United States. I contacted macrobiotic counselors outside of the United States. And they told me the same thing, pretty much, was to go through the medical establishment and then heal myself naturally, preventively. And so that didn't agree with me. I because of my research, because of my way of life, I had to give it a shot and heal completely naturally. And so then I contacted different holistic practitioners, and they pretty much said the same thing. About 6 months or so prior to my diagnosis, the only symptom I had was fatigue. And I'm a very energetic person, so it was I noticed it. I have traveled the world. I have done all kinds of things that I've wanted to do, and fatigue has never bothered me. So between when I was feeling so much fatigue, and then I'm not the kind of person who is attracted to alcohol or drugs or anything like that, but certainly sweets and natural sweets. But because of the fatigue, I ate many more sweets and refined carbs. And so between those, I believe between those things, I got a diagnosis of cancer. And because these natural practitioners and macrobiotic counselors in general told me to go through the medical establishment, I'm not the kind of person who does that. I have to figure out things on my own. For me, the call of health, and that's why the speaker before me was so quintessential with her information and what she is doing. I believe it's a very deep calling to health. It's a very deep calling to the self. I had about, it took me, in the beginning, I went through all kinds of healing modalities along with eating strict, which didn't really work for me. I've been fasting and doing colonics and all kinds of extreme alternative healing modalities throughout my life since my teens. But hundreds of ginger compresses and figuring out whether to eat soy or not and figuring out whether to juice or not. I contacted all kinds of alternative clinics all over the world as well. And I asked these macro counselors if they knew of anyone who healed naturally from breast cancer. And none of them did. I know they're out there. And for the most part, because there's so much judgment and criticism toward healing that I have experienced on my own, because the thought would be, well, you didn't eat clean enough, or you didn't chew your food enough, or you didn't follow 9-star key directions enough, or whatever these judgments were. It's very difficult because navigating the alternative healing world is extremely overwhelming, and I am versed in it. And so when I actually had the diagnosis myself, and I had to go to these very deep places in myself to figure out why, number one, why? Why did I get this diagnosis? What is the root cause? It's not diet. For me, it wasn't diet. I had been eating clean, not clean, but I had been eating wide macro for decades. Diet is extremely important, and it is one of the pillars of healing. But number two for me, so diet is definitely key. Number two is, and I'm only speaking for myself, I cannot speak for anyone. For anyone who has experienced cancer or chronic disease for themselves or for loved ones, for others, it is very much an individual healing path. For me, number two was and still is meditation, deep breathing, qigong, douyin. Meditation for me, for all the research I have done, especially in the past 2 years, but throughout my life, I have always wanted to meditate consistently, to really get to the deeper levels of questions that I've had in my life. I believe questions that have really led to this diagnosis. Questions of who am I and why am I here and what do I want to do? I came from a very troubled childhood, a lot of trauma. And throughout my life, it was not unconscious to me. I've been in and out of therapy quite a bit and dealing with these issues. But there was also a part of me, especially in my 20s and 30s, where I just said that I would wake up and I would, you know how youth is, you really recover quite easily, right? And the next morning you feel great. But then as we age, we don't recover as quickly as well. It takes us a few more days or whatever. I would always put off, I'll do that next year. When I'm 30, I'm 40, I'll do that. I don't want to deal with it now. Well, now I have to deal with these questions that I didn't know. And many of you might know, and many of you may not have these issues. I believe cancer is a disease more of the soul, it's a learning disease. And so I had to face these questions that I never wanted to, that made me very uncomfortable. I didn't feel like I belonged in the world. I didn't feel like I belonged in a world that was full of environmental pollution and violence and plastic and too much garbage and too much criticism and judgment. I don't know. I didn't know why I was here. I didn't feel like I belonged in these shoes. And that's how I felt as a very little girl growing up. And even though I have done a lot in my life and I have lived through a lot of the passions that I've wanted to in my life, there was a disconnect. There was a duality that I was not able to figure out. So number 2, meditation, deep breathing is extremely important to go to those deep recesses. In fact, Dr. Joni Carley had said how macrobiotics a long time ago, and when I was studying it at the Kushi Institute, it was all about food. Food is your destiny. And for me, food is not necessarily my destiny. It is a huge part of the picture, but for me, it's not necessarily the only deal. There's so much more to life. I had taken care of my physical body so well and kept it clean, so I thought, and such, and that it took a long time for this diagnosis. And when I was diagnosed, we often feel there's no time. You have to do this now. Whatever they tell you, you have to do it now. There's so much fear around disease. There's so much fear around taking our health into our own hands. There's so much fear around death and dying, and really figuring out our own path in how we want to heal. It certainly is my path of figuring out what I want, how I want to heal, taking my health in my own hands. And even though macrobiotics for me, like I say, it has been with me for forever. I mean, since I was little and since I studied it and I worked with hundreds of people in changing their life, macrobiotics is so helpful. But for me, it fell short until it didn't, until I really understood the principles, the underlying principles, and put them to work without necessarily believing the lip service from others, but really living it and discovering it on my own. When I was younger, there was something I really wanted to do in life when I was an adolescent, a very little girl. And because of my upbringing and because of the trauma in my life and because of my extreme low self-esteem, because of my inability to believe in myself and the words that have always littered my brain throughout my life, that I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't. That is how I felt most of my life. And so I wanted to be, even though I pursued my passions, and I still do all the time, daily, I didn't believe in them. And so that sort of repressed and squelched energy became very toxic in my life. So number 1, diet, lifestyle. I've been doing the macrobiotic wet scrub, on the skin daily for decades. It's my preferred choice of cleaning my body. So diet, lifestyle, exercise, yoga, doing, walking, whatever the exercise is. Number 2 is the meditation, the deep breathing, the getting to more of a stillness within myself to allow whatever needs to surface, and to feel. When someone would say to me, well, feel from your heart, like I don't know what I want to do. Well, feel from your heart. What do you feel from your heart? I couldn't feel from my heart. I didn't know what that felt like. I didn't know what feeling deeply in my system was like. I had numbed out so long ago that I was on this ride of numbing out throughout my life and not really feeling. And so with that longevity of that kind of behavior, that I just became, that my heart became very, very cold and hard in a sense. And so meditation and deep breathing, therapy with certain people, getting me to face the pain, getting me to forgive, to accept the situations in my life, and ultimately forgive people in my life, and open to this self that has every birthright, right, as we do, to step in our shoes and to do what we want and to feel that we are good enough. And then number 3 for me, because I repressed probably my biggest passion of what I wanted to do in life. And even though I have done it all my life in a very quiet, in a very private way. Number 3 was creative expression. It sounds so simple. It sounds so simple to just, it's like there are so many people on this planet who do what they want to do, and they feel every right to be out there and do that, but I didn't. And so now I realized I've been doing this all my life. I can't repress this stuff anymore. And I have opened to that creative expression. I believe more than diet, more than chewing well, more than all that stuff, even though that stuff is so important, because cancer is really, it's multifaceted. It's not just one thing. It's an extremely serious situation with the body, with the mind, with the spirit, with the mental and emotional bodies. If we negate especially the emotional life, I believe more than anything, then it really gets in the way of whether we heal or we don't. When I was studying macrobiotics in the 90s at the Kushi Institute, there was not that much weight put on the emotional life and the mental life. It was really just eat clean, eat well. And there is power in that. As probably most of you know, when you eat clean, when you really put that focus in, a lot of weight is lifted in all areas. And so I opened up to, and am still opening up to, all these facets in my life, and still passionate about finding the root cause of disease within myself and within others. I have really changed my diet now, that it's primarily macrobiotic, very much. I continually soak my grains and my beans and sprout things and ferment and make my own sauerkraut. And I've got 2 buckets of umeboshi plums going on right now. I have a friend in the Rogue Valley who has umeboshi plum trees. It's remarkable that I found finally. It's just remarkable. And I'm trying to graft a branch off so I can grow them here on the coast. I live right on the coast of Oregon now. I just moved. And so umeboshi plums, I think they're a superfood. And that's such a buzzword for so long now. What are the superfoods? The berries, certain herbs, certain foods. And macrobiotics was really more simple, but more simple and very deep. But I feel umeboshi plum is a superfood. It's one of the incredible healing foods that I include in my diet. And I like to try and make whatever I can, like sauerkraut, like pickles that I have going all the time. My son loves salt brine pickles. And so food is so important, and I'm really a foodie. Another part of my diet that I include is fasting. I have fasted for weeks and weeks, especially in the beginning of my diagnosis to really, I thought, I got to clean out my body. I got to clean out my body. And it wasn't until that I really started to get deep into what healing is all about for me. I don't do certain medical, for lack of a better word, medical, what do I want to say, things to track my progress. I am very much not, I am very much a rebel in that. And so I track my progress through very uninvasive procedures medically. And what was I getting at around that? Because to track my progress, to help see where I'm at and how I'm doing, other than feeling where I'm at and how I'm doing, because I feel better than I ever have. Yet I have my moments, of course, don't we all, where doubt creeps in and fear creeps in and fatigue creeps in. And it's not just detoxing. For me, it's all the things that encompass healing. And the underlying issues that connect us on a very deep level is really what I'm all about. I'm a poet at heart, and that's what I wanted to be since I was very little. I really feel that healing is very poetic, and being human in this huge paradigm is very poetic. And seeing life for the reality of what it is very poetic. And if I can embrace all these aspects of healing now and not blame myself or blame others, life is hard. Life is difficult sometimes. Healing is an enormous responsibility to the self. And I truly believe that if we work on ourselves and if we raise our consciousness through clean eating, through meditation, or whatever modalities that we choose to raise our consciousness, then we really are part of this one peaceful world that I always heard about at the Kushi Institute. Then we really play our role in raising the consciousness of the world, which I think that's the direction we're going in. There's so much negativity out there. There's so much negativity in the news, and it's really detrimental to focus on that. Not necessarily to be unaware of what's going on, but to focus on that. It's too much for the system. Eating refined carbohydrates and too many sweets and whatever we need or are attracted to help yin out, to help relax. That's what I used to do, especially because I'm a foodie. Food is like a huge focus of mine. It's of course where many of us, the society as a whole, the world as a whole, we gather around food. We get together with our families and friends, and food is so wonderful. It's so nourishing. It's so tasty. It's so fun. But for me now, it is so much more. Food is so much more. Anything I take into my system is so much more, and that includes negativity, emotions, vibrations. Part of my diagnosis was doing a few things that I have always wanted to do, that I have been putting off for most of my life. One is to live by the coast. And we made this move actually just in the last couple of weeks, although we've been working at it for the past year. But it really upended where we lived before and what I was involved in before, and some family that we were close to before. It really disturbed a part of my life that I was so entrenched in. And so this diagnosis really has been liberating. And like I say, I don't mean to minimize anybody's experience with cancer or chronic disease, because it's such a serious and dangerous, can be, situation in the system. And so I needed something of this gravity to make me change. I was out of tune with my body for so long. It's remarkable how I didn't realize it. And even though I did sometimes along the way, I was so out of tune. And now I've become in tune. And because I've become more in tune with my body, now it responds to me. And I took such good care of myself seemingly for so long that it took a long time for this diagnosis to come together. And I had to do something more than diet to get my life back together again.
Did you have a time when you questioned if you wanted to live?
Since I was in my teens, I've had that. I have questioned myself, and I have never, even though I have contemplated ending my life, I never would. Because there was one thing I did know in life is I don't want to take an easy way out. I'm here for a reason. I don't know what that reason is. I didn't know what that reason is, but I'm here for a reason. I'm here to learn a lesson. I'm here to do something. And I didn't know what that was, but now I do. I have answered those questions for myself. I want to live. I know what I want to do. I'm here for a reason, and I know what it is, and I didn't before. And it perplexed me. It depressed me. It weighed on me so heavy. So yes, no, I didn't want to live. This is a tough place, this planet. There's a lot going on that I can't control. I recycle and I compost. I do everything I can, but I see so much waste, and it weighs so heavy on my heart. But I'm here for a reason, and I have a part to play. And connecting with others. I'm a really introverted, private person. I'm a singer-songwriter. I have performed a lot in my life when I was younger, when I wanted to be the next Joan Baez. That's what I wanted in life. And I really squelched that, and I said I can't. And so I believed myself. I believed, for whatever reasons, I believed that. And it's been a huge part of my healing was to get to stop, to stop that, because that was part of why I didn't want to live, because I didn't allow myself to live. And so now letting that go, and I have a reason to let myself go now. I didn't have a reason before, but that's what this diagnosis has done for me. For me, cancer is a gift. And like I say, I am only speaking for myself. I cannot speak for anybody else going through anything. But cancer is a gift, and I actually feel like I'm one of the lucky ones, because I have been given this opportunity to change, to grow, to transform. The danger and seriousness of cancer is what makes it so powerful. And that power can scare you, or you can use it for healing. And that's what I'm doing. Ultimately, I don't know what's going to happen. Ultimately, I don't have a handle necessarily on the whys and the wheres, but I do know that I am taking the power now. The body has an innate ability. We know that. We know that as practicing macrobiotics. The body has an innate ability to heal. It wants to heal. It has this wellspring, this powerful energy to heal. and if we can just get out of the way. But that's a big statement, to get out of the way. It's taken me decades of learning, decades of trying to figure out, decades of researching all kinds of healing modalities, from Gerson, from macrobiotics to Gerson to everything in between, to German New Medicine. German New Medicine is a remarkable healing modality of the reasons of where and what it is and where it comes from. When I was at the Kushi Institute, Michio Kushi said many things, but he said, when people have cancer or chronic disease and they fly halfway across the world and to come to the Kushi Institute, that's half their healing. And I thought that was so interesting, so revealing of human nature. Like, really, it's the effort, it's the really deep seed that is planted in us to want to live, to want to change, to find what it is that makes us tick, to find our mojo that was just talked about. What is that? What is that nugget? Well, that is what I had to find. That's what we have to find, or we don't have to find it. I mean, we have choice, right? We have choice in life. We have that famous poem by Robert Frost, I think, The Two Roads. And which one will you take? It's really important for me to break from the fear of the whole diagnosis. It was really huge, and I had no idea. And I have counseled people with cancer and all kinds of chronic disease before my own, and I didn't. It's like telling someone, if they haven't had a child, what it's like to be a mother. You really don't know until you go through it yourself. You can have all kinds of experiences and such, but you really don't know. And until I was diagnosed, I couldn't really walk the talk. And I had to discuss the medical establishment, and even many alternative holistic natural practitioners. They are really based in fear. And it's very easy to get kind of taken in by that, because especially in the beginning, initially, of healing, I was very vulnerable and very impressionable. And until I started to really do my own healing and find my own path and become and stand in my own shoes, the fear, I had to stay away from even natural practitioners. There had to be this huge cushion area of time for me to do the detoxing I needed, do the therapy I needed, do the singing, whatever, all these things I needed to do to resurrect myself from my own ashes of my life, and to wake up and to mature into this life. I had to, along the way, I found that whatever was needed would sort of appear. And so I would meet someone and they would suggest a book, and it would be sort of my next path. And it started to really unravel easily. And I started to feel really light and happy and blissful and right. I started to feel right in life. And so it was very important to me to feel the freedom to change up on diet plans, to not have a static environment that became too familiar. And I started to learn from so many other cancer survivors. There's so many out there in so many walks of life that are largely hidden and don't want to make too public who they are and what they're doing and how they're doing it. And they are these really stalwart, strong characters who don't always eat great, but have spontaneous remissions. And I would read these stories of remarkable healings just of people on their own. And it really opened me to the other realm that have always been very attracted to, the other realm being I want to get deeper in my system, deeper in this thing called life, and let it show me what is next, and sort of pull out my need for control so much. I'm a 6 metal. You all know some 9-star key, and all of that stuff has a lot to do with who we are. I really believe in certain I'm not sure what to call divinities, such as 9-star key, and maybe that's the wrong term of it, but of how to sort of figure out a little bit of who we are and why we tick the way we do. And so I have formed or I have created this form of macrobiotics that works for me, this large life. And I had to be and have to be 100% behind it. Throughout my life, I had a very hard time making decisions, and that's from some pretty major trauma from my childhood. And so I didn't believe in myself. I didn't the choices I made were not great for me. And so now I have stepped out onto this ledge of healing myself and having to be 100% behind what I decide, and be 100% behind myself in these decisions. I'm not paying attention to the emotional world. And I was brought up by 2 successful artists who talked, overanalyzed everything. I was not in the dark about emotions and the cause and effect of things, but I certainly was numbed out, like I mentioned before, to many aspects of my life. So opening up to that on such a deep level, and because I had this very dangerous, serious condition looming at me now, forcing me to change, I decided to take it on, and this is my path. And not believing in everything they tell you, whether it's the medical establishment or macrobiota counselors, who some of them are as fearful as the rest, and which is fine. We all have our own path. We just have to find it. And so Michio Kushi said half of healing, right, is getting on the plane and flying to the Kushi Institute. The other half is food. And I believed that for a very long time. And I read the book Food is Your Destiny, and I have tons of macrobiotic books, and I love the philosophy. For me, food is not my destiny, even though it is. It's so important. But for me, there is so much more that is my destiny now, and so much more that has molded my destiny and molded my everyday living. When I wake up in the morning, I have to adhere to certain things to keep me somewhat disciplined, because if I don't start right in the morning, then it's hard for me. I'm still very easily manipulated by my own mind, my own laziness, my own frivolations, and in having things too easy. Not that I want to make things too hard, but certainly finding that balance. It's like a mobile, right? And if I do too much of this, then the mobile is it's weighted down. It's not balanced. It doesn't flow correctly. And so finding my balance in this life, and meeting and just magically meeting people who resonate with me and my path and healing and consciousness, like was discussed in the last session. That was some beautiful things she said about consciousness. And I'm always looking for good quality yin, right? consciousness, being conscious is good quality, and working from another level, a deeper level. And so the call of disease is a call of the self. It's an occasion for the self to rise above. And it's really a beautiful calling. I believe disease reminds us of it. I don't think disease is necessarily a bad thing. It certainly can be. It certainly can be overwhelming. And you just want to throw the towel in. And sometimes I do want to. But in general, it's a beautiful calling. And I think it's one of the things, disease, accidents, they make us stop and smell the roses and take stock in our life. And it opens the door for incredible change. And I think life really is incredible now. I didn't before. It took this. This is what it took for me to stop and make a change. So that's my story, at least thus far. I am writing books now. Part of my deal is I spent some time in the country of Nepal when I was very young, and I'm writing a 3-part memoir. One of them is finished, Naked in Nepal. It's a book I published a couple of years ago. I'm writing the next one. Is called Naked in Greece. It continues my memoir, and the next one, the 3rd part, is Naked in Hawaii, when I lived in Hawaii. And I really healed initially years ago from some symptoms back then, and Hawaii was a huge part of that. But now I'm not sure I'll get the Naked in Hawaii done, because I really want to write Naked in Mexico. Mexico is where I went this past winter for a very long time, not to a healing clinic, but just because it was one of the things, like moving to the coast in Oregon, that I wanted to do. I've always wanted to do. And Mexico really is what helped me heal, specifically on this journey now. So that is where I'm at, is writing. And I was a slam poet champion long time ago, and rekindling the poetic in the poetic in me, and the singer-songwriter and all that. That's more the direction where I'm going, along with making my own bashi plums and sauerkraut and all that good stuff. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'm here. Thank you so much for hearing me out. And thank you, Ginat, for being part of this. This is really a wonderful forum you do. Really.
Thank you so much, Roanne. Thank you. Thank you. Roanne, is it important for you to prove factually that you are disease-free, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, right. I mean, we all have cancer cells, right?
Yeah.
We all have, there's bacteria and viruses floating around out there all the time. And if we sink low enough in health, we're going to catch it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it important? It surely is for some family members of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it is important. It is important, and that will happen because of how I track myself through blood work and ultrasounds.
Okay. Okay.
So which I have been doing. And so it is important, because I think, especially if I get myself a little bit more out there in the world, there will be a certain realm of people who need proof. So I will. And I do track myself.
I don't know if you ever met or familiar with Legg, because she's someone who, she healed herself, and so many people wanted proof that she died from trying to prove, from taking tests and radiation. Yeah, it was a real sad story.
It's very sad. Go ahead.
I had one other question for you. You talked about how things flowed for you, and just the next logical step, and whatever you needed, there it was. And at the same time, you solicited and attracted many opinions of, hundreds or whatever of people, some fear-based, whatever it was. So it's was it just that you knew this one feels right, and all of these people, like, did you welcome them telling you about their aunts, mothers, fathers, uncles, brother, and what they did? Or do you know what I'm saying here?
In the beginning of my diagnosis, when I was really at a loss because of my background, and so then I was like, I really don't know what I'm doing here. Obviously, if I'm diagnosed with something like this, and I feel like an imposter, right? So I solicited a lot of opinions, and I spent thousands on natural supplements, on natural practitioners, on holistic, all kinds of things, infrared saunas. I mean, I did all kinds of things because I didn't think I knew. I was obviously, I have been macrobiotic for decades. I eat greens, I soak my grains. It just didn't make sense to me. So obviously I'm missing something here. So I had to hear from others. And so it's not that I accepted them, but I did to a certain extent until I learned that, oh, they are more fear-based than I am, and they don't know me, and that is not how I heal, or what is that is not what I need, because I started to actually feel in my system what felt right, what resonated with me. And that is why then it really started rocking and rolling of what works for me and who fell in my path, whether it be a book or a person. I met some incredible healers in Mexico that weren't necessarily healers that charged money in this, but people I spoke with who are very adept in human nature and in all the aspects of what it takes to detox, to release old trauma, old emotions that are impacted, that really, those impacted traumas and emotions and things we don't want to look at, and feelings that we have that are so hard, that actually create the tumors or the hardnesses in our body. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's in the beginning where I really solicited a lot of stuff to learn where I went wrong and what I need to do. But I was reaching more and more outside of myself, and until longevity within this diagnosis and healing occurred, that it sort of naturally ripened, and this sort of fruit of intelligence ripened on its own within my system. And I realized, I got this. I got this. I know what I need to do now. And so then a book, and then this. So that's kind of
Nice.
how it crystallized.
Marianne, you can unmute. Do you have a question? And then Jess, Marianne, did you want to? Yes, go ahead.
Hi. So hi, I'm wondering what kind of things you've been doing that are not invasive to track what's going on, and how those results are affecting you, and what results you're getting. I mean, do you see from those things you are doing that there is progress, the cancer is healing?
Good question. It's really the number one question that I am asked, especially when I go get I get blood work done. There are a number of tests to track progress in pretty much any form of disease, right? There's certain ones that really tell us what is going on in the system. And so there's about 5 or 6 that I do get that tell me where my system is at. Number one is, as we all know, A1C, blood sugar levels. We want those very low, right? Mine have never been too high anyways, even though sweets and sugar, not sugar like bad, like refined sugar, but like too much maple syrup. I mean, I have really a very close love affair with pure maple syrup my whole life. I was raised in Montreal. I was born in Montreal, Quebec, and I was raised in Vermont, and maple syrup is very close to my heart. It's like my twin. And so So I check my blood sugar to make sure it's low. It is. It's very low. I keep it. I just don't eat that stuff anymore. But nonetheless, blood can fluctuate. Blood work, when I get it done, and I've read in so many other with so many others that from day to day it can fluctuate. It is one of the markers I use is certain blood tests. And I guess I can write those down if you're interested. I mean, they're out there. Certain blood tests specifically for breast cancer, ovarian cancer. Some of them are the same. And then I get ultrasound because this is just, I have breast cancer and just my left breast was so many tumors. They're all quite small. And so I get tracked with ultrasound. Mammograms are too invasive. I don't want the radiation. PET scans and such. I did have an MRI in the very beginning that I was convinced, and I will not do one again. But so I had a biopsy, which I would never do again either. But nonetheless, in the beginning, I had certain tests done, and I know exactly what it is, the sizes, and etc. And I've been tracking through. Ultrasounds are great. If you get a good practitioner of an ultrasound, they give a lot of information. There's also thermograms that are very non-invasive to track progress. And there's controversies with these things that PET scans, MRI, and mammograms are really the only way to see, but it's not true. And there are many women, many hundreds, thousands who get mammograms every year, and nothing was detected until it was. And so now I have a woman practitioner who is really, really wonderful at physical breast exams. And some practitioners, really, some good ones, have the touch and can really tell. When I was diagnosed, it was during COVID. I could not find anyone to give me a physical breast exam to really feel what was going on. I went a long time to get to actually see someone. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's blood work, it's ultrasound. Those are the two things. The thermogram, if I have to. I haven't had one yet, and I'm not sure because I don't have that in my longevity of diagnosis yet to see change. But blood work and ultrasound I do, and that's how I track my progress in the world outside myself. Otherwise, I track myself, and I know exactly to a certain extent what's going on with myself, because I do my own exams and just intuitively now.
Jess, do you want to unmute?
Thank you. That was really fascinating. I had a comment and I guess a question. I have a somewhat similar story. I was diagnosed a year after I moved to a foreign country, dealing with a foreign language, foreign, medical system. And I didn't consult. Luckily for me, a doctor that, and I'd been vegan for 40 years, incredibly healthy, no history, no family history, none of that. So I was shocked and in disbelief, but I was lucky that a vegan doctor whom I really respected happened to be visiting the evening that I received the diagnosis. And he said, go do the lumpectomy and don't do anything else. And so I turned down, for example, the radiation. And the doctors here, they're all appalled. But where was I going with this? There was something I wanted to ask you, and now I'm so nervous at speaking, I've forgotten.
I know. It's okay. It'll come back to you. But I know what it
was. I'm sorry. I remember.
Okay.
I apologize. I had worked for many years in an emotionally exhausting job dealing with massive animal suffering. And I wanted out of it, but it's my cause and it's my life's work, but I knew it was killing me. And after I was diagnosed, I went back and listened to a podcast that I did where the interviewer actually asked me, how do you deal with the emotional toll that this work takes on you? And I said in that interview, in order to do this work, you have to close off a piece of your heart. I get breast cancer on my left breast over my heart with no other risk factors. And so I've always been convinced that, there's that connection there. And I viewed it as an opportunity to step away from my work finally after 30 years to say, it's either you or me. I mean, I have to save myself. And I finally left that work.
Well, that's a remarkable story, right? And there's proof again of so many people out there who have helped themselves, even just getting a lumpectomy and then continuing on in your way of making a change to continue that healing and how it transformed you. The left side, of course, it's very emotional. All disease is very emotional. And so that's a beautiful story. I mean, that's a really inspiring snippet of someone's life right there. And it's inspiring. That's what helped me along the way, is just these little stories I would hear. So what did you do? What did you eat? What did you think? What did you do? Because we learn from each other. The simplest person is the greatest teacher. It's remarkable. So I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. It was fascinating. Thank you.
Michelle, you want to unmute?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your story. Wow, powerful. And I love everything I heard here today. So I just wanted to ask you, what are you doing as far as drinking acidic things like coffee? Are you doing that? Or what teas do you drink? And I ask this because I am going down a road where that is like the one thing I consider doing. I don't want to say bad in macrobiotics, but I know it's not benefiting me because I feel sick after I have some. So even 1 cup in the morning, which leads me to more. And I know, of course, I'm getting too young. So there you go. But my question to you is simply, what do you do as far as nourishing drinks for yourself when you had cancer that you changed, and what do you do now? If you could.
I think it's a great question because because I intermittent fast every day now for 20 hours. So I stop eating, and the research that I read on this, for me, it helps because I'm such a foodie, and I need long distances between my window of eating. It just helps me with my energy. It helps me with my energetic energy. So if you read about intermittent fasting, there is this whole line of thought that you can drink, you can't, not even lemon water, because that breaks the fast, but you can have black coffee or water or black tea. Now, I only do hot water until the afternoon when I have my first meal. But what I think about coffee, first, number one, if you feel a little icky or ill or whatever is going on after you drink it, is it because of the guilt you feel in drinking it, or because coffee is not a bad beverage? I mean, how many macrobiotic counselors and people studying back in the 90s, at least when I was there, they all drank coffee and some donuts with it, but they all drank coffee, lots of it. A lot of them smoked cigarettes, lots of them. So we're talking about way too narrow living, eating, etc., and needing extremes to relax. And that's why I did sweets. And so, but nonetheless, it's not just good quality. It's not just needing to yin out with some coffee or or whatever. I think there's two things. Coffee is not bad. Nothing is bad in moderation, really, but coffee is not bad. And I think I partake in it sometimes. It's delicious. It's fun. I love it, but it's not something for every day. But certainly in my life, I never did coffee because I did sweets, and now I wanted to get off sweets. So then I started to do a little bit of coffee, and a little sipper there, a little cup. It's really a treat. So what I do now is I do my hot water and teas. I still like kukicha. I drink ginger tea. I just do fresh grated ginger in hot water a lot. I think ginger is is a superfood. I do smoothies now, and that was like a huge taboo in macrobiotics, was to blend drinks and drink them, God forbid. Smoothies are really helpful for me because I do not take supplements now. I tablets and all the fillers and all that stuff. So for me to, and I don't really juice anymore either. It's just, I prefer a smoothie. So that is a drink I do almost daily with a lot of stuff in it. So between my smoothie and my hot water and my one meal with sometimes a little, I can't fit too much in. And sometimes I'll have just a coffee or a grain coffee. I love grain coffee. Like there's I like the dandy blend. It's a roasted dandelion powdered drink, right? And I sometimes put some mushroom powder in it, and that's delicious with some oat milk or something like that. Or I make my own chia or flax milk, and I make it into like this latte kind of yummy beverage that just is wonderful. So all I have to say is there's two things going on. There is, and this is what I deal with all the time, is guilt for eating, drinking, doing something that I was taught and pushed into me because of what I believed in. And I put these modalities, these people up on pedestals, and they knew what was right. And that is ultimately what got me in trouble in life, was believing too much of that and not in this, and feeling what was necessary. If it doesn't make you feel well, we'll go inside and figure out why. Is it because of the guilt, or is it because coffee isn't good for you and you got some kind of stomach thing going on and it's too much acid and it's too much this and whatever? Or maybe it's just for once or twice a week, or maybe it's to take a break and deal with something else and clear something else, so then you can enjoy that, because coffee is not the culprit. Unless it's like I say, strict eating is not necessarily right, but sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes it's necessary to really go strict and do the 10 days, the 4 months, the time frames it takes for the body to really change. And food is powerful, and it brings on change, and it brings on detox, and there is a time and a place for it. And I believe that we go in these dips, these canyons and mountains where we have to rock and roll with it. So beverages, I don't have many that come to mind. Coffee is sometimes one of them. Grain coffee is wonderful. Certain teas, I do like herbal teas. I grow mint, I grow feverfew, I grow lemon balm. There's lots of herbal teas that are very healing. And sure, they're yin, and sure, they're this. And because macrobiotics, it's like a cult in me of how I used to believe in it. And it was, the dogma got to be where I had to like extract myself, like pulling a tooth to realize what it is that I need and what my thinking is. And I have so much experience with macrobiotics, with all kinds of modalities of healing. I had to like figure out what works for me. And wow, it's a hard path, but it's there. So yeah, maybe you're getting too yang, maybe you're getting too yin, maybe it's a balancing act, and it's a daily sort of balancing act that we have to find. So I don't know if that really answers your question, because I don't really have answers. I just have sort of what I've discovered now in my life and the path that I'm following.
No, a lot of food for thought. And, I did have a macrobiotic counselor who told me to drink organic coffee, because I found out that coffee actually can be cancerous. And I found out that from a coffee pot maker that said California has a warning on it. This will cause cancer. And I was like, well, a coffee pot? And it was because the way they roast the coffee beans or something. And then, yeah.
No, it's very true. There are certain things, right, that like wheat is highly toxic, and it can be. It's the GMOs and the hybridization and the crossbreeding, and then you get these tough molecules in these foods that the body, it's foreign, even though it's like healing food. I mean, there was arsenic in rice. That was a big thing a while ago of deciphering, well, what to do and what's really going on. Coffee is highly pesticide and such. So I would definitely suggest that primarily you only drink organic coffee, and certain things must be only organic.
Yeah.
especially in the healing state.
Yeah, that my problem, I'll be quick now, is the fact because I drink coffee when I drive past the Starbucks, I'm good, but one day I stop there and the addiction comes in with the soy milk, and it's like, oh no, I'm craving one. Otherwise, I don't get that energy rush. But I know thank you for telling me everything you did today.
Yeah, I think it's wrestling those demons within us of figuring out if it's the guilt or the pressure, or if it's something that, hey, it's like in moderation, everything is okay. And in fact, we're better off. I remember Michio said, you're better off eating regular ice cream rather than all the vegan renditions with all the bad oils and such. And it's like, so there's a little point of what to do here, and taking, I mean, that's why the judgment and the criticism in certain realms of healing modalities is so toxic. It's very tough to decipher and let go of and figure out and find your way in it.
Yeah, thank you.
Don't be too hard on yourself, but I'm the queen of hardness, so I know where that goes and where it's coming from.
Well, Roanne, I think this is time to say thank you.
Thank you to all my kin. You're all kin out there, and we're all on this journey together.
Very good. Thank you so much.
All right, you all take care, and I welcome any questions or anything. My email is roannelegg@gmail.com. If you want to chat about anything or whatever, I'm open. Love meeting kin people along the journey.